Before my eyes, endless white snow stretched out as far as the eye could see, but in an instant, it transformed into a warm and luxurious real estate office. The bone-chilling cold still tingled from my fingertips to my heart, and I felt dizzy with pain. I instinctively reached out to lean on the tall figure beside me, only to be shoved forcefully to the ground. "Charlotte, are you going to buy or not?" Following the voice, I looked up and met Thomas's face full of disgust. Thomas, my longtime crush I pursued for 4 years. After learning I'd won the lottery, he asked me to buy him a villa with cash. To be with him. I bit my lip and did it. After moving in together, I ended up living like a caretaker. When the crisis hit, he convinced me to go out for supplies. When I returned empty-handed, he refused to open the door, leaving me outside in freezing cold until I didn't make it. I stood up and asked the saleswoman, "Do you have any affordable villas far from downtown? I've experienced how dangerous extreme cold can be. This time around, I'll never waste like I did before. I'm going to stock up heavily, build a secure shelter, and survive in freezing conditions this time." The saleswoman offered a polite smile. "Ma'am, this is a premium villa development." She turned away without saying more. I didn't argue, just got up and left. "Charlotte, if you're not buying, don't pretend, okay? It's embarrassing." I pushed him away. "You think it's shameful that I'm not buying for you? When did you ever feel bad about living off someone else? You were the one who asked me to buy it for you, not me asking for it." "Oh, then I'm not giving it to you anymore, just leave." As soon as I got home, I started thinking about where to set up the safe house. The population density in the city was just too high to be suitable. Even though rural areas are remote, they're not exactly empty. Villages have houses close together, so buying one wouldn't guarantee safety either. Affordable far away, and with lots of space. A farm. It hit me all at once. Farms are far from the city center, and I could raise some cattle and sheep too. It was really the best option. No time to hesitate. I drove straight to a farm complex over 100 kilometers from the city, but everyone shook their heads when they heard what I wanted. Just as I was about to give up, a middle-aged man walked up to me and said, "Hey girl, I've got an unused farm, but it's pretty far out." My eyes lit up right away. I grabbed his arm and jumped in the car with him straight to the place he mentioned. The road there was rough, almost completely surrounded by mountains on all sides. The farm covered over square meters, with a concrete outer wall and divided into 2 sections inside. The front section had 3 separate shelters for cattle, pigs and sheep. There weren't many animals, just 2 dairy cows, 3 beef cattle, for sheep, and 8 pigs, and the space they took up wasn't that big. On the left side of the back area was a large vegetable garden and a septic tank. On the right side, there was a big poultry shed for chickens and ducks, along with a large storage building and a small 2-story self-built house connected to it. Overall, I was really pleased. I started discussing the price with the man right away. My brother glanced at my clothes and cautiously held up 3 fingers. I pretended to think it over, haggled a bit, and finally bought the farm for $1,000,000. Afraid I might change my mind, he went with me that same day to complete the transfer paperwork. As we parted, he gave me a handbook on livestock and poultry farming. It was only 5 in the evening, so I took a taxi straight to the nearest barbecue restaurant for a big meal before heading home. The farm was quite basic, and I had no idea how to improve it, but since I had money, I decided to leave all the upgrades to professionals. The next day, I went to the city's largest construction company, paid extra to reserve a designer who then came with me to the farm. I want construction methods that can match the insulation systems used in polar research stations. I'm turning this farm into an unbreakable fortress. Budget isn't an issue. The designer would deliver the plans 3 days later. I didn't waste time. I rented a large truck, bought charcoal heaters, power banks, self-heating meals, water, seeds, medicine, and other supplies, then moved everything into the farm's warehouse. The construction company quoted 2 million yuan for a full renovation of the farm fortress, but even with the fastest schedule, it would take over 3 months. I raised my offer to 40 million and asked them to shorten the timeline, working around the clock in shifts, and complete everything within 1 month. Since I was offering such a large sum, they reluctantly agreed after some hesitation. On the first day of construction, I called my parents back home, pretending I just missed them, and invited them to come visit me. The next evening, I picked up my parents. After carefully thinking it over, I decided not to hide anything. I told them about my second chance at life and the coming extreme cold era. Seeing that I wasn't joking, they fell into deep thought immediately. "Mom and Dad, please believe me," I pleaded. "I'm your dad. I can tell if you're lying. Daughter, you've been through a lot." My father sighed. My eyes welled up. My memory of freezing to death in the past life still sent shivers down my spine. But there was no time for sadness. I explained the livestock fortress plan to them and showed Dad my shopping list. He frowned, crossed out my list, and made a new one. 500 bags of rice, 500 bags of flour, chocolate, alcoholic drinks, daily necessities, sausages, several bottles of penicillin, 10,000 pounds of pig feed, 30,000 pounds of hay, and 5,000 pounds of chicken feed. "Dad, will everything fit?" asked, puzzled. "Make sure we have plenty of hay. The cows and sheep need a lot to eat. They can't go without." I looked at the blueprint. "I want the construction team to knock down that wall at the far end and expand the storage space." With that, my dad led us straight out to the warehouse supermarket. "Dad, do we really need to rush like this?" My dad didn't answer and sped up the car. We went straight to the warehouse manager, handed him a card, gave him our list of supplies, wrote down the address, and asked the workers to load everything immediately and deliver it right away. The manager took the card, nodded respectfully, and quickly called over the staff to start loading. Watching workers quickly load the goods, we drove straight to the livestock farm and bought another 5,000 pounds of hay on the way. On the second day of construction, the workers broke apart the old wooden planks outside the greenhouse. Now the farm looked even worse than before. My dad took the blueprint and glanced at it quickly. He spotted a problem right away. "Here," he said. I followed his finger. There was the sewage pit. "Don't level this area. Instead, convert it into a biogas system. Biogas can be used for power generation. The rooms won't be renovated, except for load-bearing walls. Knock down everything and turn them into storage spaces. Have the construction company dig open the farthest corner of the first floor and build a large underground shelter. It will be extremely cold. Living there on the surface isn't practical." I understood right away. Quickly called the project manager, sent over another 10 million, explained the new requirements, and asked them to double their workforce. The job had to be completed as soon as possible. With such generous funding, I became their biggest client, so they sent even more workers over, drilling wells, expanding storage areas, building the shelter, and constructing new greenhouses. Within a single day, the farm had already undergone significant changes. The most noticeable change was the shelter. Though called an air raid shelter, it was essentially a new underground level spanning over 600 square meters. Its entire structure made from reinforced protective materials. We weren't idle either. We were moving in hay, animal feed, and various food supplies day and night to the farm. This naturally raised questions among the workers. "Boss, why are you doing so much insulation work? And won't your cattle and sheep need all this feed?" My dad replied, "We're planning to expand soon. It's better to prepare ahead of time." The worker nodded and went back to work. That day, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. "Transfer me 10,000 yuan, and I'll let go of the issue about not buying you a house." Since my phone was on speaker mode, both my parents could hear Thomas's words. They were stunned into silence. "You're still lost in your dreams," I shot back. "You think I don't know what you're really after. You just want to be with me, right? If you hand over half the money, I'll agree to your advances. Who do you think you are to believe you're worth anything?" I hung up on him right away. The end of the world is coming, and all those past grudges come rushing back. Images of a crimson sky at sunset and howling winds flash through my mind as I close my eyes. If it weren't for him, how could I have died so fast? By the 7th day, thanks to the workers' non-stop efforts around the clock, all the air raid shelters had been fully repaired. Temporary tents were set up outside the farm for the workers to rest. To earn this money, they even flattened outdoor toilets and turned them into makeshift sleeping rooms. The outer structure of the farming fortress was now complete, so well built that even the original owner wouldn't recognize it as a once-ready shed. My father worried that snow might block the ventilation shafts in extreme cold, so he extended and reinforced each one with stainless steel. The warehouse was packed full of hay, roughly about 50,000 catties in total. Since livestock require a lot of feed, I had another plan. I ordered several storage shelving units online and asked the workers to move all human supplies down into the underground shelter. The top of the fortress was fitted with non-crystalline silicon nitride glass, while the walls were painted with 6 layers of special freeze-resistant cement, unusually thick. Honestly, if it weren't for how expensive air raid shelter materials are, I'd have loved to rebuild the entire inner core using that same material. That day, my father brought home 3 strange-looking down jackets. "Pop, what kind of jacket is this?" I asked. "These are aerogel thermal jackets," my father said calmly. "They're extremely cold and drought-resistant, capable of withstanding temperatures as low as -°C. Maybe we can finally move around safely in a harsh winter apocalypse. Who'd even want to walk outside?" I muttered, rolling my eyes. Dad just smiled without saying anything. Since we were deep in the mountains, building things up didn't draw much attention. As time passed, the farm became more and more complete. I installed surveillance cameras throughout the fortress to keep track of the animals. During that time, Thomas kept messaging and calling me every few days. It got so annoying that I blocked him. More than half a month later, the farm was officially upgraded into a fully fortified shelter. The most impressive part was definitely the air raid shelter. Later, I gave extra money to the construction crew and expanded it to over 1,000 square feet. At the front end stood a massive charcoal furnace covering more than 50 square meters. It also served as the main heating source for the entire shelter complex. Right behind it, about 50 square feet were turned into our living area. We added interior walls, reinforced the outer surfaces with steel rods, laid cement, and finished with white plaster to create 2 separate rooms. The remaining 900 square feet were filled with large 4-tiered storage racks, just like those used in warehouse supermarkets. Workers moved them into place according to instructions, and everything looked neat and organized. Items were sorted by type: areas for drinks and snacks, instant noodles, hot pot bases, staple foods, daily necessities, and more. Extra space was used to store electric stoves, grills, barbecue pits, and 20 large refrigerators. The fridges were packed full of fresh meat and a wide variety of seafood. We'd only use the animals as needed. After all, they're endless resources we could rely on for years to come. With only a week left until the collapse of society, there were still some usable supplies outside. We decided to go out one last time to gather essentials. On our way back home, we passed by a dog meat restaurant. My dad and I didn't want to stop, but Mom insisted on pulling us in. A huge Alaskan Malamute was tied up outside. Its fur was matted and dirty, lying there quietly whimpering. What awaited it wasn't hard to guess. We couldn't bear seeing that, so we paid the owner 2,000 yuan and took the dog home with us. The Alaskan was very intelligent, probably realizing we'd saved it. It wagged its tail happily around us, didn't sit on the seat, but stayed quietly in the car aisle instead. I named it Goody because I couldn't think of any other name. With a new member in the family, we turned around and headed to the pet clinic for a full checkup. Goody didn't have any serious health issues besides ear mites, but it was pregnant. We then had the vet give it a thorough bath. During that time, we visited 3 pet stores and bought every dog food and supply we could find before finally calling it quits. We returned to the shelter by 9 o'clock at night. From that day on, our outside activities would be limited to within the compound, staying indoors for 5 days. Signs of unusual weather patterns from the early stage of the crisis gradually became clear. First came unexpected snow in April, sparking widespread online discussion. Some people posted warnings about extreme weather conditions on the internet, but these were quickly removed by authorities for spreading panic. Many started stockpiling warm winter clothes and supplies, causing prices to spike instantly. Then came sudden temperature surges. Average temperatures across the country neared degrees Celsius, with some southern areas soaring past and even degrees. The heat waves were palpable on city streets. Those who had rushed to buy winter gear were left shocked. The prices of coats, blankets, and heating pads plummeted instantly, while air conditioners, cold drinks, and ice cream saw massive price increases. With temperatures rising sharply nationwide, various regions began enforcing emergency vehicle restrictions one after another. In some areas, roads were completely empty. People across the country suffered greatly under this extreme heat. Meanwhile, our family of 3 stayed safe in the cool and comfortable air raid shelter, enjoying rice and grilled meat while happily playing on our phones and watching movies. The heat wave lasted for 3 days straight, with people collapsing on sidewalks and being rushed to hospitals. Hospitals in the city became overcrowded, as patients suffering from heat stroke and heat exhaustion filled every ward. The air conditioning in the farming fortress had been running non-stop for 3 days, making the temperature unbearably high. Since the fortress was already designed to retain warmth, the heat inside became extremely intense. Even though the highest temperature in northeast China only reached degrees Celsius, just that level was already too much for animals to handle. Thankfully, Dad had foresight. After I mentioned the prolonged heat wave, he immediately installed air conditioning. Otherwise, these animals would have surely suffered from extreme heat stress. The government quickly issued a high-temperature emergency alert, urging people to stay indoors as much as possible and wait out the heat wave at home. Online discussions went wild. Some said this was El Niño making landfall. Others claimed it was the beginning of a scorching apocalypse, where everyone would perish in this crisis. Fear spread rapidly across the nation. City governments swiftly assigned volunteers to deliver supplies to every neighborhood, while power workers worked overtime around the clock to prevent citywide blackouts. The entire country stood united in facing this challenge. After a week of relentless heat, temperatures finally began to drop, and the government lifted travel restrictions. During this week-long heat wave, nationwide fatalities reached million with over being public service work. Just as people were beginning to breathe a sigh of relief, a massive rainstorm struck without warning. It's here. It's finally here. Watching the heavy raindrops mixed with hail pounding down from the sky, my heart sank. This storm marked the true beginning of the deep freeze apocalypse. These past 7 days online have left me deeply affected. I've seen countless workers, police officers, and special forces fall victim to the extreme heat. The nation did everything it could to protect every citizen, but in the face of natural disasters, how small humanity truly is. It's only been a week, and the death toll has already reached 1 million. After careful thought, I still wrote a detailed post online about the coming cold apocalypse. It's too late to build shelters now. We can only urge everyone to stock up on down coats, blankets, food and water, heating pads, and power banks as much as possible. The post was quickly pushed to the top, with many people leaving comments saying they'd already started buying supplies based on my advice. Better safe than sorry. Seeing that most online users are still thinking clearly gives me some comfort. I just hope my small effort can help more people survive this crisis. That same day, I received another local phone call. Without much thought, I answered it. Hello, Charlotte. Did you already know about these extreme weather changes all along? Hearing Thomas's frustrated outburst on the other end, I rubbed my ear and held the phone a bit farther away. What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying at all. Don't play dumb. Back then, when you asked the real estate office if there were any remote villas, I already felt something was off. Why would someone as wealthy as you lower your standards like that? Now it all makes sense. So what if I did? I just laughed coldly. Just let me move in, and I'll forget our past issues. If you cooperate with me, I'll still be with you. What do you say? Thomas, it's just heat waves and heavy rain. My family only has extra food stored. I don't understand why you're so eager to come over. Enough talk. My high net worth friend already posted online, saying they got early warnings and are preparing to head to Africa for warmth. Don't think you can fool me. I might not know where you live, but I do have your information. With disasters piling up and people turning cold-hearted, Wouldn't you rather avoid being exposed? Wouldn't you want to keep this quiet? I stayed silent, exchanging a glance with my parents, and Dad gave a slight nod. I instantly understood what Dad meant and acted scared, saying, "Thomas, please don't tell anyone. I actually wanted this house for us to live in together. I was planning to surprise you. You were so cold toward me before. But come over tomorrow." That's better. In the aftermath of disaster, we'll stick together and look out for each other. I'll treat you well. After hanging up, my expression darkened instantly. Dad, who are you even letting into our lives? I didn't dare say a word. Stop scaring the child. Our daughter's already so trusting. Don't upset her. Mom pulled Dad's ear. What now? Should we really let him come? If we don't let him, the exposure could cause serious trouble. We're not worried about random people showing up. But what if the government takes over by force? I removed Thomas from my blocked list and sent him our location. That night, none of us slept well. I just hoped the rain would keep pouring harder. The fortress was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and to make grazing easier, it was built right at the top of the tallest peak. Dad had checked the entrance. Water would collect easily there. If it kept raining for another 2 or 3 days, even if Thomas had amazing abilities, he wouldn't be able to drive up to the farm. Walking there would be completely unrealistic. Apart from the risk of sudden small landslides, the rough and steep trails would be far too much for Thomas to handle. After reassuring myself, I fell into a deep sleep. The next day, the heavy rain seemed to have heard my prayer. Instead of easing, it only grew worse. The sky looked as if a hole had been torn open, with strong winds howling and rain pouring down like nature's fury. The heavy rainfall made us all relax gradually. There was no way the mountain pass could still be accessible now. Neither Thomas nor anyone else would be able to reach the farm, and we were effectively cut off from the outside world. Just as we spoke of him, Thomas suddenly sent a message, making my already relaxed heart jump again. I've reached the halfway point on the mountain. It should take me another 30 minutes. Charlotte, don't forget to open the door. I passed my phone to my parents, and we exchanged a glance. Something unexpected suddenly came into our minds. Now that Thomas had arrived, there was only one way things would go. He'd come in but never leave. In this world turned upside down, the first to go must be anyone who stands in our way. Anyone who dares stop us from surviving will pay the price first. Thomas, if you're determined to end your own journey here, then I'll make sure every past wrong is repaid tenfold right in front of me. Thomas's timing was spot on. I was struggling under the umbrella in the rain, my clothes already soaked on one side. He looked even more disheveled. Turns out he'd walked up here all by himself. Seeing my stunned expression, Thomas glared at me fiercely. What are you staring at? Hurry and get me inside. My parents had already gone into the shelter ahead of time. The clever hidden design proved its worth. Without knowing where it was, no one would ever suspect there was a whole space beneath the ground. I led him into the fortress, watching Thomas's clearly unimpressed expression. I bit back a smile. We'll be living here together from now on. You want me to live down here? Thomas looked around at the single blanket-covered floor, and the occasional sounds coming from nearby animals, his face full of disgust. It's warm in here. I'll stay in the storage shed outside the fortress, I said, turning to leave. Wait. Thomas grabbed my arm. Where do you live? I timidly pointed toward the small, temporary shed built by workers outside. Thomas's eyes flickered. Then he changed his tone. Charlotte, this little house is yours. I'll manage in the shed just fine. My heart leapt. This was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I kept my expression calm. All right then. But don't touch the food inside. That's all we've got left. Then I guided him into the small house. The little shed was simple, but it kept out wind and rain. Built with leftover insulation material mixed into cement, it stayed cozy even during heavy storms. Thomas gave a satisfied nod as he took in the clean and tidy space. He cast a greedy glance at the supplies my parents and I had just moved in only half an hour earlier. I helped Thomas take off his coat, but he gave me a look of clear disapproval. Keep your distance. I can smell the cow manure on you. Thomas, Let me wash your coat for you. I kept up my frightened expression. He paused, reasoning that as a woman, I wouldn't risk doing anything tricky, and gave a reluctant nod. Wait. I froze, then slowly turned with a soft smile. What is it, Thomas? Give me my phone back. My heart sank as I handed over the phone to Thomas, then wrapped the coat tightly around me and slowly stepped out of the small cabin. Back at the livestock fortress, my parents were already waiting by the gate. I didn't get it. I shook my head. But it's not a problem. We brought him supplies so he wouldn't cause trouble during the early days of the cold apocalypse. Now that he's here, he definitely won't reveal our location. Next, I locked the greenhouse door from the inside. A security gate strong enough to resist bullets, so tough even a tank would struggle to break through. As long as it's not opened from within, Thomas will never get in for the rest of his life. After finishing everything, we retreated back into the air raid shelter. The rain poured down relentlessly, yet we felt strangely calm. Last life, I left Thomas with a debt. I'll make sure he pays tenfold this time around. Not knowing whether my parents were safe when I died was my biggest regret. This life, I'm determined to keep them alive and survive the freezing apocalypse together. Before going to bed, I scrolled through news on my phone. Reports about the heavy rain were everywhere. In central basins, flooding was extremely severe. Roads already had cars floating in the water. In high-altitude regions, it's unclear if the higher elevation meant less rainfall, but many people from lowland cities were packing up and evacuating to safer places. The government urgently hired temporary workers to build shelters. With poor visibility in the rain and extremely tough working conditions, progress was slow. The torrential rains damaged crops, making this year's harvest look bleak. Farmers' livelihoods were at risk too, and everyone prayed for the storm to end soon. But I know this rain will keep going for another half a month. After that comes the real white desert. The next morning, the storm worsened even more. I ran to Thomas's door clutching the coat I never washed and pounded on it hard. Thomas opened the door, annoyed. What do you want? I'm here to return your jacket, and I need a self-heating meal pack. I haven't eaten yet. I gave a light tap to my belly as if it were full, then handed Thomas the damp clothes. Take it. Take it. I don't want anything that smells like cow manure. Thomas wrinkled his nose in disgust and started to shut the door. Thomas, my food. I reached out quickly to hold the door handle. Get lost. Thomas shoved me hard and I fell to the ground. If you're not going to stay away, then just eat grass like the cattle and sheep. There are chickens too. Aren't their eggs good enough? Before I could say anything, Thomas slammed the door shut. I stumbled back to the shelter. My father handed me a warm hand heater right away. Sweetheart, shouldn't we just ignore him? He's an adult man, and if I don't ask for food, he'll get suspicious. Once he runs out of supplies, when the extreme cold sets in, we won't have to worry about him threatening us anymore. 2 weeks passed. To keep things quiet, I visited Thomas's door every day. At first he'd reply briefly, but soon even that stopped. He didn't make a sound at all. I woke up and looked out the window. The sky was an unusual shade of red today, and the rain seemed to be easing up. The internet was still working. The government had activated emergency-level response protocols. Many city buildings were flooded up to 3 or 4 stories high. Rescue teams were rushing in, using simple rubber boats to move between the submerged streets. News of their efforts filled every screen. The rain stopped. People looked out with sinking hearts. The sun didn't rise at all. On the 3rd day after the storm, light snow began to fall, then thickened into steady flakes. Soon it turned into a heavy blizzard with huge snowflakes swirling through the air. The freezing apocalypse had arrived. At night, the wind howled fiercely, and tree branches swayed wildly, like skeletal hands reaching toward the crimson sky, carrying despair and anguish. I pushed open the second outer gate of the greenhouse, and a freezing gust hit me as I leaned out. My eyes watered instantly from the cold. Shivering, I quickly shut the fortress door again. In my previous life, I'd stayed cooped up at home with the air conditioning on, so I never realized just how freezing it could be on the first day of the collapse. The next morning, snow had piled up thickly across the ground. My parents and I first fed the animals, then headed to the cow shed. I studied the care manual while practicing how to milk cows step by step. Before long, I actually managed to get a small bucket full. I placed the milk on the cooking pot, turned on the power, and began heating it up. The manual said raw milk shouldn't be drunk straight. It needed to be boiled first. Even in this freezing world, we still had to take care of our health while we could. The greenhouse was still quite warm. I checked the thermometer without burning coal or wood. Could stay at degrees Celsius. I poured a cup of hot milk for each of my parents to warm up. The cozy scent of milk rose gently from the room, along with wisps of steam, sharp contrast to the howling storm outside. A few days passed, and the snow showed no sign of stopping. Back then, I'd frozen to death outside in my last life, but luckily, everything could be reset. This time around, gathering by the stove to share tea, with my parents beside me. Family warmth meant more than anything else. Charlotte, open up. I know you're still alive. The sound of knocking echoed through my double-layered door, barely audible as it drifted into the farmyard. Through the front gate monitor, I saw Thomas's disheveled figure, his arms wrapped tightly around himself. Without a coat, the cold made him hunch over. I called out to him through the door. The smell in here is too strong for you. Charlotte, stop stalling. Let me in right now. I know you've got supplies. I saw smoke coming from your chimney. I let out a laugh. You never gave me any supplies back then. Why do you think I'd let you in now? Do you really think I won't break this door down? I just turned away and shut the second door, no longer paying attention to Thomas's angry pounding. Cold enough for him. Our farm has great sound insulation. His frantic knocking barely reached us. Let him keep going if he wants. The more he knocks, the better. Let him wear himself out. Thomas eventually gave up and left. With temperatures so low outside, how could someone in just a hoodie possibly endure it for long? I shook my head as the fresh pork belly and lamb sizzled on the grill, their rich aroma filling every corner of the room. Time to eat. Mom, Dad, I'm grabbing a piece first. Rascal. Mom playfully smacked the back of my head. You can't just dig in before we're ready. The three of us sat around the grill. Warmth from the fire. Delicious meat to eat. Everything felt perfect. For days passed like this. Thomas came by once or twice a day to knock, then left again shortly after. After all, outdoor temperatures had dropped below 40 degrees below zero. In just 1 week, the temperature dropped by more than 40 degrees. Even gods would have caught a cold before stepping out. Charlotte, please let me in. You said you wanted to be with me, didn't you? I've actually liked you for a long time. I'm so cold. I know you wouldn't want to see me suffer out here, would you? I wore my heavy winter coat and opened the door. Before Thomas could even smile, a bucket of icy water mixed with fresh manure splashed all over his face. Charlotte, you damn. Thomas froze when he saw my parents fully armed and holding 2 farm knives. Young man, we've been putting up with your behavior for far too long. My dad already looks intimidating. He's even more frightening now with that dark expression on his face. Thomas looked completely disheveled. The water on his body froze instantly upon touching the frigid air and snow. Seeing my parents, Thomas lost all his confidence. Uncle and Auntie, I'm Charlotte's boyfriend. We've had some disagreements. Please don't treat me the way she does. You can't just lock me out like this. My mom stared at him as if he were a child. We've been watching from inside our shelter for days. When you refused to give her supplies and turned her away, we saw every moment clearly. After saying that, my mom shut the door firmly, leaving Thomas outside, probably because he saw my parents were there. Thomas didn't dare to knock again. He quietly retreated back to the small shed nearby. Life was busy and fulfilling. We fed the animals every morning, milked the cows, and collected eggs from chickens and ducks. Another week passed in a flash. The temperature had dropped sharply to -36 degrees. During that week, Thomas didn't show up at all. I even started wondering if he might have already passed away. That day, I put on the so-called space-grade insulated jacket my dad brought back, and he also handed me a thermal helmet, though I quickly refused it right away. It's only below zero by 30 degrees or so. Definitely not cold enough to be deadly. But this jacket is truly amazing. I felt warmth spreading through my body almost instantly, and stepping outside didn't bring even a hint of chill. It's way better than any regular down coat on the market. I couldn't convince my dad otherwise, so I put on the helmet anyway, even though it looked really silly, though it did keep my face warm. After fully dressing up, Dad and I walked a few steps to Thomas's door. The door was slightly open. Oddly enough, even though it was snowing heavily outside with strong winds howling, very little snow had blown into the room. I pushed the door open and found Thomas lying motionless in bed, eyes closed. The one who caused my death last life is now dead by the same cold. Fate has come full circle. I felt a mix of emotions deep inside. I gently took his phone from Thomas's stiff hand, then left the room with my dad. Back at the fortress, I quickly slipped into the shelter and played with Guagua for a while before giving him a big handful of dog food. Guagua's belly had gotten much bigger. Her due date must be just around the corner. Luckily, a ewe up top just gave birth to a lamb and has plenty of milk. I plan to collect some as backup for Guagua's recovery period. Fresh sheep's milk is far more nutritious than any commercial dog milk formula available. I charged Thomas's phone and tried turning it on to see if he had accidentally shared the fortress location before his passing. After turning it on, I checked his social feed, group chats, and message history. He'd posted about his daily life, but never mentioned the fortress's whereabouts. I felt a bit relieved. Outside, the wind howled and snow fell heavily. Besides feeding our livestock, we'd also clear the snow regularly, so the path in front of our door remained fairly passable. Just a month had passed, and temperatures had already dropped below -40 degrees. In just 1 month, the cold had reached levels close to those in northern Mo. The internet was still functional. Due to the extreme cold, many places had stopped clearing snow altogether. Piles now towered like buildings, and even southern regions weren't spared. Across the country, people working outdoors suffered varying degrees of frostbite, unconsciousness, or worse. Fortunately, at this temperature, electricity supply remained stable and people could still survive. The government urgently called for volunteers to deliver supplies door to door in neighborhoods. After a full month of efforts, several batches of volunteers had ended up hospitalized from the cold. The cooling trend continued, but unexpectedly, the heavy snowstorm stopped after just 1 week. Just as people were starting to breathe easier, they suddenly realized with alarm the temperature was dropping even faster. First, it had only been a 40-degree drop over a month, but after the snow stopped, temperatures plunged 10 degrees in just 1 day. Now, the lowest temperature outside was already -51 degrees. After days of relentless cold, fewer and fewer volunteers remained to keep going. The government, which had held on for so long, finally couldn't manage anymore. Many people began rioting, breaking doors down, and seizing supplies from house to house. Some even went beyond robbery. They took lives, then stored the bodies in refrigerators as food reserves. The country began to fall into chaos. The cold apocalypse had arrived, and humanity's core values had completely collapsed. Even though the government issued urgent announcements and was building S-tier safe shelters, it couldn't calm down the public's fear. 1 month after the world ended, everything had completely fallen into chaos. Our family was huddled in the air raid shelter, watching news on our phones, grateful that we were safely tucked away in this quiet spot far from city life. We welcomed 4 new little lives. Guagua gave birth. She successfully delivered 4 tiny Alaskans. Gently, she nudged her newborn pups toward us, her eyes shining bright as if saying, "Look, aren't my babies adorable?" I quickly warmed up fresh goat milk and gave them some nutritional paste. The little puppies instinctively searched for milk, looking absolutely precious. Now we've got 4 more hungry mouths to feed. Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. The Alaskan's appetite was huge, but the food supply we'd stored was enough for her to last a lifetime. Even if 4 more mouths showed up, we wouldn't have to worry. Outside temperatures dropped sharply. Within a few days, people probably won't be able to survive outdoors anymore. The temperature in the livestock fortress was also getting colder. And now we had one more daily task: burning charcoal. Luckily, the The charcoal stove is underground. Very convenient. During this time, our beef cow gave birth to a calf. We made full use of every part and enjoyed some delicious barbecue hot pot meals, while also treating Guagua to extra snacks. The leftover beef bones were saved as chew toys for Guagua. Fresh meat tasted completely different from frozen meat, richer and more flavorful. 2 days later, the dense crowd of faces on the surveillance screen caught our attention. Dad, look. I pointed at the main control screen, my eyes wide as I stared at the crowd packed tightly at the fortress entrance. What's going on? Dad asked, puzzled. Our whole family quickly made our way to the first floor of the fortress. Through the glass, we could see at least 100 people standing out there. At the front were the pasture owners who had sold us feed for the farm. The woman in their group held a small baby who was crying uncontrollably. Is anyone there? Please, help us. We've struggled so hard to get here. Most of our neighbors didn't make it. Unless you help us, we won't survive. I know there are people inside. Kind young lady, good-hearted person. Please, just let us in. Think of how I helped you build this fortress with my feed sales. Let us in. Mom and I felt deep sympathy and turned to Dad for guidance. Dad spoke firmly. In a world like this, you never know who's truly good. We can't risk letting strangers in. Better not take them in at all. Just as Mom and I were about to agree, the baby's cry suddenly grew louder. Outside, the couple and the villagers all dropped to their knees at once, shouting for help. I couldn't bear it anymore and asked hesitantly, Dad, what if we let in just the little baby? We can't possibly take care of over 100 people. It's too much for us. But one more mouth won't be a burden. Mom nodded in agreement. My father sighed in disappointment. Such excessive kindness is unwise. After some negotiation, my dad finally gave in. I carefully slid open a small window in the security door and called out, we don't have enough supplies to take everyone in. So we're sorry, but we can't accept you all. However, we're willing to care for this baby. The child didn't do anything wrong, and we want to give them a chance. The rancher couple exchanged a quick glance, their faces lighting up with relief as they nodded rapidly. Of course. We're old now, we can afford to live a little less. But the child must survive. Then ask the villagers to step back and only keep your family at the front. I'll open the door just enough to bring the baby in. The rancher stepped a few paces away and spoke quietly with the village leader. They cast wary glances toward the fortress, then slowly moved farther back. I felt relieved and just started to open the door a little wider when the rancher's once friendly expression suddenly turned fierce. He gripped my arm tightly, yanking me out forcefully. Before I could even scream, he pressed something sharp against my throat. What are you doing? My parents shouted in alarm. What do you think? Open the door and let us in, or your daughter will freeze to death with the rest of us. At that moment, I felt deep regret. I should have listened to my dad. There's no such thing as kindness in a world like this. I've already been through death once. I shouldn't make the same mistake over a single child. The villagers closed in around us. With no choice, my parents opened the gate and let all of them inside. Only after the last person had safely entered did the rancher bring me in behind him. His tone was harsh. Lead us to your supplies right now. We exchanged a quick glance as a family, then silently led the group toward the storage area. The villagers stared at the well-stocked warehouse with wide, eager eyes. Since the snow started, I haven't been in a place this warm before. They grabbed some ropes and tied us up tightly, forcing us to lead them through the farm fortress. The few animals on the first floor were disappointing, but when they saw the second floor filled with chickens and ducks, along with crops already pushing through the soil, greed lit up every face. Besides the air raid shelter, we went through every corner of the fortress. Even though the supplies inside were substantial enough for our family of 3 to survive, they still weren't nearly enough for over 100 villagers. They rushed into the storage room in waves, grabbing food and supplies. One person drank 2 bottles of water in one go. Another stuffed compressed biscuits straight into their mouth, while someone else just ate instant noodles plain. It was clear these people were starving. My parents and I were left aside, under the watchful eye of the ranch owner's family. I looked at the woman holding her baby and asked, "You're a mother?" Aren't you using your child to gain sympathy? Isn't that cruel? Cruelty. The woman scoffed. You have so much stored away. What difference would letting us in really make? Why should you live comfortably while we suffer from hunger and cold? We paid for all of this ourselves. You've got money too, haven't you? The signs of the cold crisis were clear long before. The government warned everyone to prepare. How can we blame you for everything? I argued firmly, but she slapped me across the face. With my hands bound, I lost balance and fell hard to the ground. This was my husband's ranch all along. I'm just reclaiming what belongs to him. I fell silent and stepped behind my dad, who remained calm. Even though you sold it to our farm, we've turned the facility into a fortified shelter. Without us, you wouldn't have been able to quickly learn about the area's conditions. I suggest we work together peacefully. We'll share the supplies with you. The villagers seemed to hear something absurd. A gaunt man with a sly look sneered. Can't you understand? This place has always belonged to our village. If you know what's good for you, show us how the shelter works inside, otherwise, you'll freeze out there. I stayed composed. You have over 100 people, but we're only 3. There's no way we could escape even if we wanted to. Holding us won't help anything. Why not untie us? Some machines need to be shown by someone who knows how they work. The villagers looked at one another, then slowly nodded. I didn't rush. I led them from machine to machine, showing each one off as we went down from the second floor to the first. The closer we got to the bunker, the more my heart pounded. My palms grew sweaty as I exchanged a quick glance with my parents. Up front is the last machine, the automatic weed remover. The operation might be a bit tricky. I deliberately slowed my tone, gave my parents a subtle signal, then turned sharply and kicked the nearest man in a sensitive area. Ah, you rotten woman! The man doubled over in pain. We seized the chance to run as fast as we could toward the bunker entrance. The villagers followed at a relaxed pace. As we reached the exit, they were certain it was too cold outside for us to dare leave. But they were wrong. My dad reached the bunker first and quickly opened the door. Mom jumped inside ahead of him. The villagers finally realized what was happening. Don't let them get away. They had a backup plan. 3 strong men dashed forward to stop us, but my dad and I were already inside. At the moment the door was about to close, a hand slipped into the gap. It was the rancher. The air raid shelter door was thick and heavy. There was a sharp crack, like bone breaking. The rancher had lunged forward, and the pain drove him to cry out for help urgently. In an instant, Guigui sprang agilely to the door's edge and bit down hard. The rancher screamed even louder and quickly pulled his hand back. The air raid shelter door was shut completely. I was still shaken. Quickly locked the door behind us. This door that even a bomb couldn't break through had become our greatest protection. My dad hugged Guigui and praised. You've done an amazing job. Guigui wagged its tail, eyes wide open, tilting its head to look at us. Too bad I can't reward it with goat milk now, I said sadly. I told you, in a world like this, there are no good people. My mom and I fell silent. We realized this entire crisis had come from our own compassion. If it weren't for us feeling sorry for the baby, would we have let all those people in? In the harshest times, when people were turning to each other out of desperation, we still believed in kindness. Anger gave way to silence. We both felt deeply guilty, and Guigui, along with my dad, stayed close by us. Seeing our distress, Dad comforted us. This just shows you two have a kind heart. We're still safe as a family of 3, and the supplies down here will last us for years. There's nothing to fear. We promised Dad we'd never let our hearts soften toward anyone again. Since the above-ground fortress had been taken over by the villagers, we had no choice but to retreat underground. At the same time, we could no longer dispose of waste directly into the sewage tank, thankfully. The cat litter we'd bought earlier came in handy. The supplies up top were only enough to sustain about 100 people for over a month. Once they ran out, their fate would be dire. The animals couldn't be kept. We'd lose them eventually, as the villagers would likely consume them. The fortress's temperature control was entirely underground. If we stopped burning charcoal, the upper level would drop by at least 10 degrees. Currently, The fortress could only maintain a temperature of 25 degrees. 15 degrees might be warmer than outside, but prolonged cold exposure could still lead to illness. The loud banging on the ground gradually quieted down, so I turned on the overhead surveillance system. Originally meant to monitor livestock health and conditions, the cameras were now repurposed to keep an eye on the villagers. Most of the villagers lived in family units, gathered in small groups of 3 or 4. The rancher had become the de facto leader, responsible for distributing supplies among the people. After all that running around, they were finally exhausted. The rancher's family stayed in a separate hay storage shed. The blanket I'd laid on the ground earlier as part of my performance for Thomas was now covering them. Other villagers found different places to rest among the remaining hay storages. After covering themselves with bales of hay, they fell into deep sleep. The monitors soon filled with the steady sound of snoring. Early the next morning, the rancher sent more villagers to bang on the door again. Throughout the morning, the banging came in shifts without pause. I scratched my head and mentally called them foolish, then ran a hand over Guagui's soft fur. Thankfully, I'd been kind to her back then. Otherwise, things could have turned disastrous. Thank goodness I was so kind to Gentle. Otherwise things could have turned out badly. Sure enough, dogs are the most adorable creatures in this world. I pulled out a royal crab from the freezer and decided to treat myself tonight. Royal crabs are expensive and take up space. I only stocked 4 in total. After surviving everything, eating one shouldn't be too much, right? I also found sukiyaki seasoning in the instant pot-based section. I'm going to make royal crab sukiyaki tonight. Since we added plenty of coal, the fire from yesterday hadn't gone out yet today, so the shelter remained cozy and warm. But this comfort won't last long. By this afternoon at the latest, the fire will be completely burned out. The underground part's fine, but on the surface, heat escapes quickly. People would never survive the cold. Sure enough, by afternoon, we were still getting our luxurious sukiyaki ready, while those above ground were already feeling chilled. Why is it suddenly so cold? The ranch owner gathered everyone together and asked, but no one had an answer. They searched every corner of the first and second floors, but couldn't find any heating system. They must have hidden the heating underground. The ranch owner shouted in frustration, but anger does no good. There was nothing they could do. To stay warm, they had to stuff handfuls of hay into their clothes. Through the monitor, I roughly figured out there were over 20 households, with about 5 people in each family. They were all from the same village and knew each other well. I hadn't noticed yesterday, but today through the monitor I realized some of them were familiar faces from when I bought the ranch. It turned out the information had leaked during my purchase of the farm. I watched them carry on with calm routines inside the fortress. Some families handled planting, others took care of feeding the cattle and sheep, while a few managed cleaning duties, though most of these heavier tasks were carried out by women and young girls in the households. Men and boys spent their days mostly idle from morning until night, drinking, eating, chatting, or playing cards. This village seemed quite backward, clearly favoring males over females. Outside, temperatures had dropped sharply, and inside the fortress, with our heating cut off, it was bitterly cold. Seeing the women shivering while working in the fields, I felt no trace of pity anymore. To stay warm at night, people had to sleep huddled together, conserving body heat, so much so that the hay storage shed was packed with bodies. Another week passed. Food supplies dwindled rapidly. Despite women and girls surviving on leftover scraps, the stock vanished faster than expected. Eventually, they turned to their livestock. On the first day, 4 pigs were slaughtered. The women chopped up the pork and placed it into pots, one after another, beginning to cook. Without proper seasonings, they used flavor packets from instant rice meals, carrying each pot of stew out to the men in turn. Even when starving and with leftover meat still available, the women had to wait until the men finished eating before they could have a few scraps. They stretched those 4 pigs' meat to last for 2 weeks. When the farm owner slaughtered more pigs the second time, 2 families happened to fall ill, highly contagious, and even strong men ended up with severe fever. He quickly thought of a plan, cleared his throat softly, and called the villagers together. Friends, with temperatures this low, Even a simple cold can become life-threatening, and we have no medicine. If it spreads to others, all of us, over 100 people, could be in serious danger. The villagers looked at one another in silence. After all, they were neighbors, and no one dared to speak up first. But the two families weren't calm anymore. William, are you trying to betray us now? Don't forget what we did for you back then. Ah, the ranch owner interrupted. I'm doing this for everyone's sake. Right now, you're sick and need more food, yet can't work. Doesn't that seem unfair to others? William is right. The ranch owner's words quickly turned the whole village against the two ill families, and someone spoke up in agreement. That's right. Survival is already hard enough. How can you be so selfish? Are our lives any less valuable? Lock them up and let them deal with it on their own. Yes. Let them fend for themselves. With one person speaking out, the villagers were eager to throw the two families out immediately. Several men surrounded the families, dragged them into a pig pen, and locked the door behind them. Watching them turn on each other, I let out a cold smile from behind the monitor. Once this first act of division happened, conflict among villagers would never truly end. A month passed in no time. The entire month included the 4 piglets born to the mother sow, all now eaten. Temperatures kept dropping. More people were getting sick, and many others dared not show any signs of illness. Once someone fell ill, being locked in a pen was their only fate. In just 1 month, over 50 people had already been isolated. Those locked away received only a small amount of leftover food each day. Many couldn't endure the hunger and died slowly from starvation. Their bodies began to give off a foul smell. Food supplies were running dangerously low, leaving only cattle and sheep. Another week passed, and the last of the village's sheep had been consumed. Perhaps it was because the temperature had dropped so severely outside. It had plunged below degrees. The sick kept appearing, and more people were being sent to the livestock pens every day. Within just 1 week, only 10 families remained, totaling fewer than 30 people. Yet the ranch owner's family showed no signs of illness at all. I couldn't help but think, some people truly bring trouble for generations. The sheep, already low in meat yield and few in number to begin with, had now all been eaten. Even with fewer people left, it wasn't surprising they were gone so quickly. The ranch owner reached for the cattle. On the day the cow was slaughtered, another family was sent to the pens. As soon as the gate opened, those still alive inside surged out in chaos. The sick and healthy fought violently with each other. More people rushed toward the ranch owner's family. Their hatred had reached its peak. Someone struck a deep wound into the ranch owner's abdomen, and he fell down, unwilling but defeated. The chaos continued. Those in the pens were weak from hunger and less strong than others, yet they spat at the rest of the group. If I die, I'll take you filthy bastards with me. If I don't infect you all today, may I never bear the name sure. I let out a quiet sigh and turned off the monitor. The next day, I turned on the camera again. I checked the pig pen first. Besides the previous bodies, the family of the ranch owner had been added. The baby lay on the ground like a discarded rag. Truly pitiful. Fewer than 40 villagers remained, and those still alive in the pig pen were released. It wasn't clear how they had reached an agreement yesterday, but now they sat together eating beef. After the ranch owner's death, the remaining people were surprisingly peaceful, likely because there was enough food, and no further conflicts arose. Another week passed. With so few people left, the workload became overwhelming. So only the remaining women received beef. They were considered the main labor force. Those who had been sick earlier seemed to have improved noticeably, maybe because they finally had enough food to eat. While I was watching the monitor, my parents came by. My dad teased my mom. Look at how lucky you are. You don't have to do any housework. You're always talking nonsense. You dare make me do chores? Mom snapped. Never, never. We 3 had a happy time together. Time passed neither too fast nor too slow. 3 months later, the cattle were all gone. That day, desperate with hunger, the villagers turned on each other again. People kept getting injured, collapsing over and over. In the end, only a dozen people remained. They took off clothes from the bodies and set up a cooking pot. They began consuming human flesh. The scene was too disturbing, and I immediately turned off the surveillance video. For the next month, I didn't dare to turn the monitor back on. A month later, after a long break, I finally turned it back on. By then, all the villagers had perished. I quickly called out to my parents. Dad immediately told us to put on down jackets and helmets, then rushed ahead to open the air raid shelter door himself. Thanks to these down jackets, we actually managed to move around comfortably even in extreme cold. After more than half a year underground, we finally returned to the surface. Because of our compassion, we lost all our livestock, and our crops had frozen to death. My parents and I carried the remaining bodies to the sewage pit. As we did so, I couldn't help glancing at one. Its face was unrecognizable, with clear signs of being bitten into. After roughly cleaning up the area above, we returned to the shelter. The moment we took off our down jackets, we all instinctively shivered. Quickly, we lit a fire to warm up the fortress interior. In the midst of this world after the collapse, the darker side of human nature was laid bare in full. Over half a year had passed, and more than 100 people inside the shelter turned on each other in violence. None survived in the end. I don't feel sorry for that woman who lost her child, because she was one of those who tried to take over our supplies and belongings. Nor do I pity the other women who were innocent, especially when we three were attacked by a mob. If they had been willing to fight alongside us instead of turning against us, the outcome might not have turned out so one-sided. The result we see now: everyone is facing consequences of their own actions. It wasn't nature's wrath that killed them, it was their own choices. The next day, as warmth returned to the shelter and I looked at the mess on the ground, my guilt deepened. If it hadn't been for that moment of compassion trying to save a child, these people would never have been allowed in, and our livestock wouldn't have all ended up lost. Now we've cut off any chance of retreat for ourselves. I took out a few bags of seeds from the bunker and planted them in the soil. Everything has to start over. But I'm thankful my parents and I are still together and safe. Thankfully, we have enough food stored to last for decades. Next year, the vegetable seedlings will sprout from the ground. We'll have fresh vegetables again. Even though we've lost all our animals, life still goes on. We're back to living as before. There's still thousands of pounds of hay left in storage, but now it's no longer needed. We plan to burn it all for heat. Coal is a limited resource, so we'll use as little as possible. Guegue's 4 puppies are now able to move freely. They're full of energy and always running around the shelter like crazy. Postscript: it had been so many years that I couldn't even count them anymore. Guai had grown into an elderly dog, its days fading like sunset. Its 4 puppies were now full-grown and seemed eager to run laps around the fortress 108 times every single day. Our crops had ripened one after another, and at last, we finally enjoyed fresh fruits and vegetables again. Over the years, we'd fallen ill from time to time, but thanks to our large supply of medicine, we always made it through safely. My life with my parents followed a simple routine: tending the fields, working hard, spreading fertilizer, and spending time with our dog. The ground temperature had dropped to -degrees, but it finally stabilized. The sun still hadn't risen. Why? We didn't know how much longer this life would last, but we believed that one day, the sun would rise again, and hope would never truly vanish.